Hi, I'm Andy Ramirez for the Liberty News Network. Today's story addresses the recent murder of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, who was killed in the line of duty on Tuesday, December 14, 2010, in Rio Rico, Arizona. This area is just north of Nogales and the U.S.-Mexican border. Before I get into some of the details of this story and report, I just want to say a few things. This type of story is a little more personal to me. In fact, it's a lot more personal to me because I spent several years out of my life, in fact, most of this last decade, investigating what has taken place inside of U.S. Customs and Border Protection and analyzing border security and immigration and enforcement and what have you. Due to that, I've had an opportunity to get to know some wonderful people, both active duty and retired agents, the men and women who have been protecting and continue to protect America's borders at and between the ports of entry, and not just in the Border Patrol, but numerous other agencies as well. I've stayed at many homes, I've dined with many agents and their families, I've broken bread with many of these same folks. What I've come to know of them over the past few years is their dedication to protecting America. Here are some of the details pertaining to this incident. Now, Secretary Napolitano recently was in Arizona along with CBP Commissioner Alan Burson, first to meet with the agents as well as then talk with the media in the Tucson and Phoenix areas. She and Commissioner Burson met with the Arizona Republic's editorial board, and they have published a report, some of which I will be quoting from. They address the incident of the shooting as well as where they want to take DHS and CBP. The agents were seeking to apprehend what's called a RIP crew, which is a name given to a crew that is organized to seek to rip off people who are drug mules or traversing the border illegally, she said during a meeting with the Arizona Republic's editorial board. That's where they were in the area. Now, that's the first confirmation from DHS about this incident and, of course, the resulting gun battle and why they were in that area. 4 suspects are in custody. The 5th remains at large and is probably absconded back to Mexico, where they always go right after such incidents. Now, it's reported that the individuals, the suspects, were armed with AK-47s and a gun battle did take place, and that they also had communications as well as other items with them. Now, independently, I have heard from sources, so I will treat this as a confirmation that all of that is true. Which then leads to the question, why would the Border Patrol send these agents with non-lethal loads or beanbags for their shotguns into an area where, to quote billboards that were out there in July of this year, stated as follows: danger, public warning, travel not recommended, active drug and human smuggling area, visitors may encounter armed criminals and smuggling vehicles traveling at high rates, stay away from cash, clothing, backpacks, and abandoned vehicles. If you see suspicious activity, do not confront, move away, and call 911. Why would a BORTAC unit be out there with non-lethal loads? BORTAC is an elite unit. If you're going out there, you send them out there with lethal loads. Allegations are that this was under the orders of their former and disgraced Chief Patrol Agent Victor Menjades, as I've heard from my sources. Napolitano talks about how the numbers of apprehensions were down from 725,000 in fiscal year 2000 to 219,318 for fiscal year 2010. If you recall a report I've done earlier where I addressed ICE deportation numbers, where I'm pretty sure you know where I stand on that. I think the numbers have long been fudged. She also continues by stating that they're providing 1,000 new agents, which a large swath, to quote her, will be provided in the Tucson sector. Burson's also saying the same thing, and that the stepped-up enforcement efforts and aggressive stakes taken to dismantle these entrenched smuggling and organized crime groups increases the danger for Border Patrol agents. They know that they stand between the American people and the Arizona community in this kind of danger. That shooting, in fact, in some ways, is the result of a challenge that is being made by law enforcement here to organized crime. Well, if that's the case, and they know what's going on out there, and they know the response from the cartels, why were they carrying non-lethal loads? That's a question that demands to be answered. Such orders would have to have come from headquarters, and we know that if they were issued by Chief Ramirez, who, by the way, was the subject of a Time magazine article earlier this decade where he was identified as the son of a deported illegal alien. Well, and he is a known sycophant of David Aguilar, and knowing that, in my experience, through the course of my investigations, that a number of people who, active and retired alike, refer to him as the supreme ruler and a supreme micromanager, we know then, based on that, I'm certain that such orders would have come from David Aguilar. But to understand that, you also have to know then, as reported by Local 2544 on their own website, that David Aguilar, and of course this has since been confirmed by a number of news reports, along with ICE Director John Morton, were out with the media but 3 days after the death and murder of Agent Terry, endorsing the DREAM Act. And here are some of the statements that came out of Aguilar there. The border has never been as secure as it is today, but there is a lot of work to be done. We are down by 72% on apprehensions. We have more border infrastructure than ever. The Border Patrol has doubled in size. We have a tremendous amount of support from ICE. We have joined forces with the government of Mexico. He continues with this. We are looking at additional 1,000 agents this year, with most being deployed in Arizona. Anything that would help mitigate cross-border illegal activity would in and of itself be a force multiplier. And that is a key one of David Aguilar's words. So he's telling us, and we're supposed to accept this, that the DREAM Act and the resulting effect on illegal immigration, of course, which the DREAM Act encourages more, is going to be a force multiplier for the agents and enhance their efforts to secure the U.S.-Mexico border? Well, that's bovine scatology. He knows it. His employees, the men and women at CBP and the Border Patrol, know it. The retirees know it, because it doesn't work that way. And it's not just coming from him, but it's coming from Alan Burson, who relatively says the same thing, that we're more secure and doing more. Well, it's a lie. And sadly, we have lost another agent in the line of duty as a result of these continued lies. But here's something that further enhances David Aguilar and how agents are compromised. During his time as Tucson Border Patrol Sector Chief Patrol Agent, a card was issued called a military incursion or salute card, very similar to similar salute cards presented to the military when they were overseas. This was issued by the Public Information Officer to agents in Tucson Sector, and it states on the back of the card, and I quote, "Remember, Mexican military are trained to," and this is underlined, "escape, evade, and counter ambush if it will affect their escape." And underlined are escape, evade, and counter ambush. Now, they also advise agents to keep a low profile, use cover and concealment, don't move excessively or abruptly, use shadows and camouflage to conceal yourself, and stay as quiet as possible but communicate. It's right there in this card, which I presented in testimony in July of 2006 to the Foreign Affairs Committee. Now, it's very clear. They're telling the agents to hide. They're telling the agents what the dangers are in facing the Mexican military. And by the way, one of the allegations in this case, in the murder of Agent Terry, is that there were Mexican military personnel among the individuals. Now, that said, why would you send them out there with non-lethal loads, given the signs, given the facts, given the be on the lookout, BOLO advisories, intel reports, etc., etc., etc.? Why did we have to lose another agent in the line of duty when we know these facts? Why do we continue to watch David Aguilar, Janet Napolitano, Alan Burson, John Morton, etc., going out there and saying the borders are the most secure they've ever been? How can they continue to do this? They're the ones who are responsible for the men and women who are protecting America at and between the ports of entry. They're responsible for securing America. And in a post-9/11 world, this is who we have to lead these departments and agencies. For the Liberty News Network, I'm Andy Ramirez.